My name is Eli. I'm 15 years old, and I used to believe my dad only loved me when I was winning. He's the kind of man who gets up at 5 a.m. every day, drinks black coffee, lifts weights in the garage, and never, ever misses a deadline. He doesn't cry, he doesn't joke, he doesn't hug, he believes in hard work, straight backs, clean hands, and not talking too much. He also believes that feelings are distractions, and in our house, distractions weren't allowed. We lived in a small white house on Maple Avenue with a brown fence and flower pots Mom always tried to keep alive. My little sister, Grace, was 11 and full of sunshine, always singing or drawing or talking to her cat. She knew when to stay out of the way. I wasn't as good at that. Every Sunday, Dad made us do yard work before church. Every Monday, he checked my grades like he was running a business. If I scored under 90%, he'd pull out his big sigh and say, "Eli, you're smart enough to be better than average." Sometimes I wanted to scream that average wasn't a crime. But I didn't, not until that Friday. It started like any other day, except it was game day. We were playing Jefferson High, our school's biggest rival. I was the starting midfielder on the soccer team, and I'd worked like crazy for that position. Dad didn't come to games. "I support you by providing," he'd say. So I stopped inviting him. That afternoon, the field was packed. The whistle blew, the crowd roared, and I played my heart out. We won. I even scored the final goal. My teammates lifted me up. The coach slapped my back. I was buzzing, maybe, just maybe. This would be the day Dad looked at me and actually saw me. When I got home, still wearing my grass-stained jersey, he was in the garage polishing his toolbox. He looked up once. "How was the game?" he asked without much interest. I grinned. "We won. I scored the winning goal." He nodded, not smiled, not "well done," just nodded. Then he said, "Did you remember to finish that math assignment that was due today?" I stared at him, my smile falling. "Seriously, that's what you care about? Don't raise your voice." No, I'm sick of this," I snapped. "Why do you care more about homework than anything I do?" He stood tall and hard. "You think soccer will feed you in 10 years? I felt something inside me break open. I think maybe having a dad who gives a damn would have helped me more than any math sheet ever could. We stared at each other. Mom came to the doorway. Eyes wide, Grace peeked from behind her. Dad's jaw tightened. "Get out of my sight, Eli, now." I threw my bag down and stormed inside. Slammed the bedroom door so hard it shook the hallway. I didn't come out for dinner. I didn't come out when Mom knocked softly. I lay on my bed, fists clenched, blinking back tears. My phone buzzed once. A message from Coach. "Proud of you today, Eli. You were fearless." I read it over and over. The next morning, I woke early. Sunlight was creeping through the blinds. I hadn't slept much. I wasn't even sure if I lived in the same house anymore. I tiptoed to the kitchen. The table was empty. No cereal, no clatter of mugs. No Dad. I poured a bowl of dry cornflakes, eating them slowly. Then I saw a note by the sink in Dad's handwriting. It said, "Working on the community roof project. Could use an extra pair of hands." That was it. No apology. No mention of last night. Just a job, an invitation maybe. I didn't want to go, but I did. It was 2 blocks away, behind the library. A group of men were hammering wooden planks, fixing the old shed roof that leaked every time it rained. Dad was up on the ladder, sleeves rolled up, sweat on his brow. He saw me, didn't smile, just said, "Grab those nails." And I did. For 2 hours, we worked in silence. The sun beat down. My arms ached. But something strange happened. As I watched him work steady, focused, I realized I didn't hate him. I hated that I didn't know him. During lunch, we sat on the curb with sandwiches. He handed me one without looking. Then he said, "I missed your game yesterday. Pete's kid told me you scored." I swallowed hard. "Yeah. Good job." I froze. Those 2 words were tiny, but they felt massive. "Thanks," I whispered, not sure if I should say more. He looked ahead. "You play with heart." I don't say it enough. I should have been there. I stared at him. This wasn't the man who asked about homework and never listened. This was someone trying. "You could come to the next one," I said, almost afraid he'd laugh. But he nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." We didn't hug, he didn't cry, but something shifted. A bridge, shaky and small, started to form. Back home, Grace greeted us with a drawing she made. Me in a soccer jersey. Dad cheering from the stands. He looked at it for a long time. Then he said, "Can I keep this?" She nodded, beaming. That night I lay in bed, not sure what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long time, I wanted to find out. The next few days felt strange, not in a bad way, just different. Dad didn't suddenly turn into a new person. He still woke up before the sun and drank his coffee like it was a punishment. He still ironed his shirts sharp enough to cut paper. But something in the air between us had shifted. He didn't yell when I forgot to take the trash out Tuesday morning. He just reminded me. He didn't scoff when I said I wanted to sign up for art class as an elective. He blinked, paused for a second, then said, "Sounds like something your mom would like. I'll take that as support." Wednesday night, he actually sat down in the living room while Grace and I watched a movie. He didn't say much, but he stayed. That alone felt like a win. Thursday after school, I was tossing the ball around in the yard, just to clear my head, when the front door creaked open. Dad stepped out, hands in his pockets. "Need someone to pass to." I almost dropped the ball. "You want to kick it around?" I asked. He gave a small shrug. "Used to be decent at it back in the day." We didn't talk much, just passed the ball, back and forth, letting the thuds fill the silence. But something about it felt easier than talking. Finally, he asked, "How'd you get so fast on the field?" I smirked. "Chasing you for approval helped." He stopped the ball with his foot, looked at me, not mad, not cold, just there. "Eli," he said, voice quieter than usual. I didn't grow up knowing how to say the right things. My dad never said he was proud of me. Not once. I thought if I made you strong enough, you wouldn't need to hear it. I blinked, not expecting that. "But I did need to," I said, feeling the words come out thick. "I do need to. I don't need you to make me tough. I need you to be on my team." He nodded slowly, then kicked the ball back to me. "I'm trying," he said. "That's not an excuse, just a promise." That night at dinner, Mom served spaghetti again. Grace told a long story about a class project, and somehow got tomato sauce on the cat. We all laughed, even Dad, who shook his head like he couldn't believe it but smiled anyway. After the dishes were done, I went to my room. I stared at my backpack, my textbooks, the shelves with my trophies. I pulled out the drawing Grace had made of Dad and me at the game, and pinned it to the wall. There was still so much to fix between us. Years of sharp words and silent dinners couldn't just disappear. But I didn't feel like I had to fight alone anymore. The next morning before school, Dad called out, "Eli." I paused in the hallway. He was standing at the coffee machine, keys in hand, looking a little awkward. "You've got a game next Friday, right?" "Yeah," I said, surprised he remembered. He nodded. "I'll be there." I smiled. "Save me a seat." He raised his mug. "It's yours." And just like that, something real began. Friday arrived with the kind of nervous energy you can feel in your bones. I barely ate breakfast. My stomach was already doing somersaults, and every time I thought about Dad in the bleachers, my hands got sweaty. I didn't tell my teammates. I didn't want to jinx it. But in the back of my mind, I kept wondering, what if he doesn't show? After school, I headed to the locker room, laced up my cleats, and tried to shake off the nerves. Coach gave the usual pregame speech, fire in his eyes, fists in the air, but all I could think about was that seat in the stands. I stepped onto the field and scanned the crowd. Parents, students, noise, banners. But no sign of him. Figures, I thought. Maybe it was too much to hope for. The whistle blew. The game started, and I ran like I had something to prove. It wasn't my best first half. I was distracted. My passes were rushed. My shots are wide. At halftime, Coach pulled me aside. "You good, Eli?" "Yeah, just tired." "Doesn't look like tired. Looks like you left your fire in the parking lot." I nodded, trying to push the worry down. As the second half began, I took a deep breath and jogged onto the field, and that's when I saw him. Dad, the far side of the bleachers. The baseball cap pulled low, arms crossed, watching. Not with a frown, not with that judgmental look, just watching. My chest tightened, and suddenly the game snapped into focus. I called for the ball. I moved faster, sharper, cleaner. I saw openings I missed earlier and took chances I might have hesitated on before. 10 minutes left on the clock. Tie game. My teammate passed me the ball near midfield. I took it, dodged a defender, cut left, and then saw it. A sliver of space near the post. I took the shot, and it soared, right past the goalie. Goal! The crowd erupted. Coach pumped his fist, and as my teammates swarmed me, I looked to the stands. Dad was on his feet, clapping, smiling, and for a second, I swear, I saw his lips move. "That's my son." After the game, I showered, grabbed my bag, and stepped into the parking lot. The air was cool now, the field lights glowing behind me. Dad was leaning against the car, arms still crossed, but with a tired kind of pride in his eyes. "Good game," he said. "Thanks. Nice goal." I looked down and kicked at a pebble. "Wasn't sure you'd come." He gave a small shrug. Didn't want to miss it. We stood in silence for a second. Then he added, "You play with more heart than anyone on that field." I blinked. "Did you say that?" He laughed quietly. "Yeah, I did." We got into the car, and the ride home was different. Not loud, not tense, just easy. The radio played something soft. Grace's drawing is still hung by the glove box, curling a bit at the edges. When we pulled into the driveway, I didn't move right away. "Thanks for coming, Dad." He nodded, gripping the steering wheel. Then he said something I hadn't heard from him in years. "I'm proud of you, Eli, not because you won. Because you showed up, you fought through." I looked at him, and I saw it. The man he was trying to become. Maybe we'd never be the kind of family that hugged in the hallway or said I love you every night. But this was something. The weekend after the game felt like stepping into new territory. Saturday morning, I slept in until almost 9. Normally, Dad would have banged on my door with a daylight's burning speech. But when I finally dragged myself to the kitchen, he was already on the back porch with a cup of coffee and a tape measure, planning out repairs for the broken fence. He didn't say anything about me being late, just nodded and said, "Fence is leaning. Thought we'd tackle it today, if you're up for it." If you're up for it. That part still shocked me. I nodded, "Yeah, I'm in." We spent the day measuring and sawing, digging new post holes. At some point, Grace brought us lemonade and sat in the shade with her sketchbook, drawing us as fence warriors, she said, in full armor and shields made of planks. Dad smiled when he saw it, and even taped the drawing up on the garage wall. It was starting to feel good, like maybe we'd found a rhythm, until Sunday afternoon. That's when everything got tested. We were in the living room, sorting through old boxes Mom wanted cleared out. Most of it was junk, old chargers, tangled cords, cracked CDs. But then I found a folder full of my old report cards. Dad picked it up, flipping through the papers, his brow furrowed. "These C's in 7th grade, he muttered. "You never told me about those." I froze, the room went quiet, my stomach clenched. "Here we go again." "Yeah," I said cautiously. "That was the year switched schools, things were hard." He didn't look at me. "Hard doesn't mean you stop trying." The air turned cold. "I was trying," I snapped. "I was lonely. I didn't have friends. You didn't even ask back then." His jaw tightened. "You don't get a pass for feeling sorry for yourself." There it was, that old sharp edge. I stood up, heart pounding. "You always do this. One second you're proud, the next you're picking at my worst moments." Grace looked up from the corner. Wide-eyed, Mom came in carrying laundry and froze. "Tom," she said softly, like she could feel the temperature drop, but he was already rising to his feet. "I'm not picking Eli. I'm trying to remind you that life's full of pressure. If I don't teach you how to handle it, the world won't care." I felt tears press against my eyes, hot and angry. "Maybe I don't want to be built like you," I said. "Maybe I don't want to carry everything in silence and pretend I'm okay when I'm not." He stopped. His fists weren't clenched. His face wasn't red. He just looked stunned. I turned and walked out the front door. The air outside was sharp with evening chill. I walked down the driveway, past the fence we had repaired together, feeling like everything we'd built had cracked again. I found myself at the park, the same place I always ran to when things got too loud. I sat on the swing, rocking slowly, trying not to cry. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then footsteps. Dad, he sat on the swing next to me, silent, not pushing, not even looking at me. Finally, he spoke. "I don't know how to do this the right way." He said, "My father never taught me how to talk to a son. He only taught me how to be tough, how to survive." He paused, watching the trees sway in the wind. "But sometimes, I think surviving made me forget how to live." I swallowed. "Sometimes I think you only see me as a failure," I whispered. He looked at me then. His eyes were tired but open. "No, I see you as someone I'm terrified of losing. Someone I want to protect, even if I don't always know how." My chest hurt. I didn't have words for what I was feeling, but I knew something had changed again. He stood up and offered his hand. "Come home." I took it, not because everything was fixed, but because he came to find me. Again, the week that followed was quiet. Not cold, not angry, just quiet in that careful, walking on thin ice kind of way. Like both of us were afraid of slipping back into the old version of us. But we didn't. Not completely. Monday morning, Dad didn't bring up the argument at the park. He just passed me the orange juice at breakfast and asked if I wanted to drive with him to the hardware store after school. It wasn't a heart-to-heart, but it was a bridge. I said yes. We rode in silence most of the way. The kind that wasn't awkward anymore, just simple. Peaceful. He let me pick the music. I played something chill, one of the songs I thought he'd hate. But he just tapped the steering wheel quietly. After a while, he said, "Your game last week. I sent a clip to your uncle in Texas. Said you were the one who made the winning goal." I turned my head fast. "You what?" He shrugged. He always brags about his kid. Figured it was time he heard about mine. I didn't say anything, just stared out the window, smiling. At home that night, things stayed steady. Grace had a school project on famous inventors, and Mom was helping her build a light-up poster. Dad and I offered to test the wires with her. When she plugged in the battery, and the bulb blinked to life, Dad raised his hands like a referee. Boom, Edison would be jealous. Grace laughed and hugged him, and for once, he didn't look uncomfortable. He held her back and even ruffled her hair. It was a small moment, but it was new, warm. Later, as we cleared the table, Mom nudged me and whispered, "He's trying, isn't he?" I nodded, yeah, he is. She gave me a smile that looked like relief. That Friday, I found something even stranger. A note in my backpack. Just a folded paper with 5 words. You're doing better, keep going. Dad. I stared at it like it was in a foreign language. He'd written me a note, voluntarily. No lecture, no guilt trip, just encouragement. It stayed tucked in my wallet for the rest of the day. Then Saturday came, and with it, a new challenge. I had planned to go see a movie with some friends. Dad had said nothing all week, so I figured we were cool. But then, just before I was about to leave, he saw me grabbing my shoes and asked, "Where you off to?" I told him, casual, no big deal. He paused, "You didn't mention it earlier." I could feel the tension build in my chest again. "I didn't think I had to," I replied, trying to stay calm. "I just think you should have asked. It's not a school night, and I'm home before curfew," I said, voice tightening. "You told me I needed to be responsible. I am." He opened his mouth, maybe to argue, but stopped. Then something unexpected happened. He looked at me for a long second and said, "You're right." My mouth literally dropped open. "Wait, what?" "You're right," he repeated. "Old habit. I want to trust you more. Go enjoy the movie." I blinked, "Thanks, and text when you're heading back." He added, but it was gentle, not controlling. "I will." As I walked down the porch, something in me felt taller. Not because I was getting away with something, but because, for once, I was being treated like someone he believed in. That night when I got home, I found him asleep on the couch, still wearing his reading glasses, the TV playing some old documentary about shipwrecks. I grabbed a blanket and covered him without waking him, because maybe, just maybe, we were both starting to understand something. You don't need to be perfect to be a family. You just have to show up and keep trying. Spring came early that year. The flowers on the porch bloomed faster than usual, and the neighborhood kids were already riding bikes down the street in t-shirts by mid-March. Life didn't feel perfect, but it felt lighter, like the weight we'd all been carrying was finally shifting. Dad still had his moments, stern reminders about chores, silence when things got too emotional, but there was more space in our home now. Space for jokes, space for questions, space for me. One Sunday afternoon, we were all outside working on the backyard. Mom was replanting her flower beds. Grace was painting little signs that said, "Please don't step here," in bright, wobbly letters. Dad and I were building a small bench under the tree. I was holding the wood steady when he looked over and said, "You've got a good eye for this stuff. You should consider architecture or design." I looked at him surprised. "Seriously?" He nodded. "You see the details." That's something I never learned to notice until later. It wasn't just a compliment. It was belief, and that did something to me. Later that night, after dinner, Grace asked if we could all sit together and watch a movie. One of those old animated ones where animals talk and cry too much. Dad hesitated, but then sat on the couch beside us. No phone, no laptop, just him, arms crossed, trying to hide the fact he was enjoying it. Halfway through, Grace curled up next to him, and without saying a word, he rested his hand gently on her shoulder. I looked at him, then at the blanket draped across all 3 of us. A few months ago, I didn't think this moment was possible. A few months ago, I slammed a door I thought might stay closed forever. But now I knew something for sure. Dad hadn't just knocked. He'd stepped through, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of what came next. I was ready. We were ready.